In her own home, helping someone she knew and trusted, 18-year-old Megan Newton should have been safe. She could never have imagined that a simple act of kindness would cost her life in the most shocking circumstances. In April 2019, Megan's life appeared to be going well. She had attended school locally in Stoke and was studying at college while working toward the career she desperately wanted. Megan loved sport and hoped to become a physiotherapist or sports therapist because she wanted to work within the sporting industry. She was a passionate Stoke City supporter and played football for Stoke Town's under-18 ladies team. At weekends, she also coached a local under-7 football team. Megan took her coaching seriously. She was working toward her Level 1 FA coaching badge and hoped one day to win a scholarship in the United States. Outside football in college, Megan was a popular young woman with a large circle of friends. Like many 18-year-olds, she also enjoyed going out at night. On Friday, April 19th, Megan had enjoyed what seemed to be a normal and enjoyable day. She got a new tattoo and then went to work one of her 3 part-time jobs at a local fish and chip shop. She returned home at around 10:20 that night. Megan didn't live with her family. Instead, she had a bedsit in a supported housing complex. After getting home, she prepared to go out again, this time to a local nightclub called Kill. The night appeared to be going well. By around 3:15 in the morning, Megan was at the taxi rank preparing to make her way home. But the following day, nobody heard from her. For Megan's friends and neighbors, this was completely out of character. Then, at around 3:20 the following afternoon, her neighbors discovered her house keys lying only yards from her home. The keys were covered in blood. Concerned by what they had found, they entered Megan's flat. What they discovered was horrifying. Megan had been murdered in her own bed. She had been strangled and stabbed 9 times with a knife taken from her own kitchen. The question was immediate and terrifying. Who could have done this to an 18-year-old woman inside her own home? CCTV quickly became an important part of the investigation. Detectives were able to identify Megan in the queue at the taxi rank, where she had been standing with a friend. While they were there, Megan and her friend began talking to an old school acquaintance, 18-year-old Joseph Trevor. Joseph wasn't a close friend of Megan's, but they knew each other from school. Like Megan, he was interested in sport and was a talented footballer, so their paths had crossed before. Megan had gone on to college, while Joseph was still at school studying for his A-levels. But Joseph's night had been very different. Earlier that evening, security guards at Kill nightclub had caught him with a white bag containing powder. He was taken to a police station, where officers seized a bag of ketamine from him. He was then told to report back at a later stage and was released from custody. After being released, Joseph made his way to the taxi rank, where he encountered Megan. He was still drunk and high, and he was worried about how his parents would react when he returned home. Both of his parents were police officers, and Joseph was concerned about appearing before them in the state he was in. Megan was willing to help him. She agreed that Joseph could spend the night at her flat so that he could sober up before seeing his parents the next day. Joseph told his father that he would be staying with a male friend from college. The decision was an act of kindness, but it would have devastating consequences. CCTV captured Megan and Joseph entering her flat together. Then, a couple of hours later, the same cameras showed Joseph leaving the building alone. He used Megan's keys to close the front door behind him. Outside the building, another camera captured something even more disturbing. Joseph threw Megan's keys onto the ground. Those were the same keys that would later be discovered covered in blood. Another camera picked Joseph up further away from the building. He appeared to be looking at his hand. His hand was covered in blood. Not long afterward, Joseph was spotted by a concerned passerby near the busy A500 road that runs through the city. His legs were on the wrong side of the railings of a bridge. Emergency services were called, and they managed to persuade him to come down. Joseph was taken to a local hospital specializing in mental health issues, where he was assessed by medical staff. They did not believe he was suffering from an acute mental health condition. He was then collected by his father. It was only after news became public that Megan had been found dead that Joseph told his family that he had, in his words, done something bad. He was later arrested at his parents' home. Meanwhile, Megan's many friends were devastated by the news. She had been a popular young woman, and tributes began appearing in her memory. One friend described her as a bubbly person, with an outgoing personality who was always there for people who needed her. She was described as someone who would be there for her friends at the click of a finger. But perhaps the most memorable thing about Megan was her smile. One tribute described it as an amazing smile, the kind of smile that made other people smile too. While Joseph was in custody, he maintained his innocence. He told police that he and Megan had consensual sex and that afterward his memory had gone blank. Detectives did not believe his account. Instead, investigators believed that Megan had rejected Joseph's advances and that this was when he attacked her before killing her. As detectives looked deeper into Joseph's background, they found a young man who, on the surface, appeared to have lived a relatively normal life. He came from what was described as a decent, close, supportive family. He had been a good student at school, passing 10 GCSEs before beginning his A-levels. He was also a talented footballer who played in goal at a fairly high level. But investigators also learned that Joseph had experienced mental health challenges, particularly following an incident when he was 15. He had been accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. The allegation never reached court, but whether the accusation was true or not, the incident had a significant impact on Joseph. He had been publicly arrested at his school at the age of 15. The incident also affected the way other students treated him. He was given cruel nicknames by his classmates, including Ralph Harris, and those names stayed with him. At least one fight had taken place at school after Joseph was taunted by classmates over the incident. There was also another disturbing detail about Joseph's behavior in the weeks before Megan's murder. After Megan was killed, Joseph was found with his legs on the wrong side of the railings of a bridge over the busy road. But according to the account, this was not the first time he had potentially considered taking his own life. Only weeks earlier, in March 2019, Joseph had made another potential attempt. This time, he was at the busy A50. Once again, he was talked down from jumping from a bridge over the road. Police spoke to several of his friends afterward. One friend described how unpredictable Joseph could sometimes appear. One day, he could happily talk and have a conversation, while the next day he could completely shut people out and refuse to speak to anyone. His friends never knew whether they were going to get the talkative Joseph or the miserable Joseph who wanted no contact with anyone. Eventually, the case reached trial. But on the first day, Joseph Trevor changed his plea. He pleaded guilty to Megan's murder. He also admitted 2 counts of rape. Joseph said the trigger for the murder was something Megan had allegedly said about the earlier accusation involving the 14-year-old girl. According to his account, Megan had told him that she was sorry for telling people that he had sexually assaulted the girl. Joseph said this made him angry. He admitted grabbing Megan around the throat and strangling her until she lost consciousness. Then he took a knife, and he stabbed her. Specialists told the court that Joseph had strangled Megan with his bare hands for at least 15 to 30 seconds. It was believed that Megan was probably still alive when he stabbed her. The judge sentenced Joseph to life in prison and ordered that he serve at least 21 years. The judge then directly addressed what Joseph had done. Megan had invited him into her home because she was trying to help him. He had consumed too much alcohol and drugs, and she had offered him somewhere safe to stay so he could sober up. Instead, according to the judge, the attack was driven by Joseph's serious and violent sexual conduct. He had raped Megan, strangled her, taken a knife from the kitchen, and stabbed her no fewer than 9 times. The injuries included wounds to her neck and back, penetrating her chest and both lungs. Megan Newton had an entire life ahead of her. She had the hopes and dreams of an 18-year-old. She wanted a career in sport. She played football. She coached children. She was working toward her coaching qualification and hoped to study in the United States. Her father later made a statement in court describing the unbearable pain of losing his daughter. He spoke about never seeing her beautiful smile again or hearing her voice. He questioned how something so terrible could happen to someone he described as amazing, caring, kind, loving, and funny. For Megan's family, there was also another painful question. Why had Joseph been released from police custody shortly before he met Megan? Megan's mother said questions needed to be asked about how Joseph had come to be released and whether the police should be held accountable. In her view, if the police had done their jobs differently, Megan might still be alive. The reason for the family's anger was clear. Joseph had already been in police custody that night before he met Megan at the taxi rank. Staffordshire Police referred themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct so that their actions could be examined. After reviewing the case, however, the organization decided that a full investigation was not necessary. Detective Inspector Cheryl Hannon of the force's Major Crime Department said that releasing Joseph after his arrest had been standard procedure. She said officers were satisfied with his identity and noted that he had no previous convictions. She supported the officers who had released him that night, adding that they could not predict what would happen afterward. The decision remains a difficult part of Megan's story because, from her family's perspective, the timing is impossible to ignore. Joseph had been in police custody earlier that night. He was released. He later met Megan by chance at the taxi queue. Megan then made the compassionate decision to allow him to stay at her flat, and that act of kindness ended in murder. There is no way to know what might have happened if Joseph had remained in custody, but the outcome is certain. Megan Newton was only 18 years old when her life was brutally taken away. She had dreams of becoming a physiotherapist or sports therapist. She wanted to work in sport. She played football and coached children. She had friends who loved her and a family who described her as caring, kind, loving, funny, and full of life. She went out that night expecting to return home. Instead, she opened her home to someone who said he needed somewhere to stay. She trusted him, and that trust cost her everything. The CCTV footage would later reveal Joseph leaving her home alone, using her keys to lock the door, throwing those keys onto the ground, and walking away with blood on his hand. By the time Megan's neighbors discovered the keys the following afternoon, it was already too late. Her life was gone. Her family would never hear her voice again. Her friends would never see her smile. And the future she had been working so hard to build would never happen. Megan's story is ultimately a tragedy born from a chance meeting, an act of kindness, and a decision that she could never have known would put her in danger. She had simply tried to help someone who appeared to need it. Instead, she became the victim of a brutal and senseless crime. Megan Newton was just 18 years old, and the dreams she had for her future were taken away forever.